Hi, I'm Laurie Morningstar back with Sweet Culture, and today's guest is Chief Judy, and I'm really excited to have her. We've been on a few adventures, and she's a very busy woman, so I'm quite honored to have her on the show today. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe talk about the origins of your culture.
Yeah, Waikikuaitep Risquest Cookby, which means chief. Judy Wilson from the Skonith Indian Band. It's part of the Sequatman Nation. We have about 32 original villages in our nation.
Hmm.
And because of the two epidemics, we're down to about 17 now. So I'm from the Skonith, and we had about 180,000 square kilometers in the interior of British Columbia. So we're one of the largest tribes or bands and nations in BC. So I've been there for about 17 years as chief and about 8 as council.
Wow.
And I'm part of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs. We represent about 110 First Nations in British Columbia out of the 204 now in exist.
That's
So
great.
yeah, so it's with all the nations in BC, they occupy every part of is where the origins are. Part of the land is the entire of the province and large swaths of territory that are unceded. Which means we've never relinquished our territories to the government or to anyone.
And so, can I ask you just about that unceded? What's the difference? Is like unceded, you have like treaties, or like
No,
what? How is that for somebody that
well,
doesn't
there
know
is a
what
difference.
unceded means?
So 110, many of us are outside of the treaty,
Hmm.
and then there's the other part, half that are in treaty processes.
Hmm.
So they would sign an agreement, what they would terms they would agree with the government.
Hmm.
With communities like ours in our nation, we haven't signed over any conditions or given up any land
And
for that. So we hold our land rights. So
so how do you get funding from the governments? Do you not?
well, we gave they took over the land and resources from our territories through the British North America Act and through the division of powers from the province to the feds, or the feds to the province. So the province got the lands and resources.
Hmm.
So we constantly are dealing with issues because we have underlying title and the province doesn't have any deed to our lands.
Okay.
So that's where you get the land rights issue.
Okay.
But I understand today we're talking about the origins of culture. So a lot of our origins of stories go way back. Like we have in our nation the trout children story. You know how we came up from under the water, to exist. And we have stories of the deluge where the world was completely underwater and how that happened. So we have a lot of our stories that go back since time immemorial, and our survival was our way of life with our nations, with the Squat Nation. So the culture emerged from that. So it
Hmm.
was our way of life. We believe in the Creator that created all of creation, and we believe we have teachings from Creator to take care of the land, take care of the water, take care of the animals and the plants and the medicines. We have drum songs, dances that tell about those stories too, and our values and our principles, and our language embodies our laws. All of those things are part of who we are as Indigenous people. And without our culture, we really it was based a lot on our survival.
Hmm.
Because say we were picking berries and we picked them all, and there was nothing left for the animals, nothing left for other people, other nations. That wouldn't be very good. So
Hmm.
we took as much as we needed. We took care of the water. We didn't impact it, so the water is a source of life. Everyone needs water, so we made sure. Same with the salmon, we didn't overfish the salmon,
Yeah.
so there, it nourished the bears, it fed the orcas, it nourished the plants. So just a lot of things that, there was that balance and harmony in our culture and our way of life, and
Hmm.
there, there's that's one of the importance of it was, so everyone could survive. So
Yeah. And like the importance of it too is like, that's such a big job with the fires that were happening, right? And I know you're working on food preservation, so like with the salmon and all of that, and doing your best to bring it back. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about those projects.
Yeah, one of my favorite one is the Wild Salmon Initiative, and we're preserving the DNA of the wild salmon while providing salmon to our people. So we've been working on it for a while now, and we should be able to start looking at how that's going to be for our interior people, because right now the with global warming and climate change, the waters are low. There's the open pen fish farming, the
Mm-hmm.
viruses, like a lot of obstacles, and the droughts and the low water, the warmer waters create havoc for the salmon to return. So
Mm-hmm.
we have to take care of and adapt for a bit till the waters are safer, the oceans are safer for the salmon to do their full cycles,
Mm-hmm.
and we will always release them to the full cycle. But we will, have our fishery and provide fish not only for our members but other nations as well. Because right now, with our community, we've had to rely on the Okanagan Nation to provide fish for us every year,
Mm-hmm.
and fish is a big part of our culture. There's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people along the river that they're salmon people, people of the river. We were, I think it's so important with the ties to the water and the salmon.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, what was your other question? I was on the
The impact on the culture.
oh yeah, the impact on the culture. Colonialism really impacted our people, right? You're hearing a bit more of it now, through the displacement of our people through the residential school. A lot of the children were taken from residential school. My father was one of them, Grand Chief Joe Manuel. He was age 5, and he was taken by the Indian agent, I believe, to the residential school. He never got to see his sisters. His family, they wouldn't let him take him home. So he's in there till age of 16, and he didn't get out there. He was, rightly so. He told us he had to fight every day in residential school. So he prayed a lot of times, and they made him kneel on like beans or rocks and stuff like that. So he had bad knees, and couldn't speak his language, couldn't see his family. So it was really abusive life. And then he was, rightly so, very angry when he got out. Took a
Mm-hmm.
long time for him to be able to speak the language to us, because he didn't. And I was glad he retained his language. I don't know how he did, because they were beaten if they did
Mm-hmm.
speak their language.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. And then I think the residential school, with the forced removal of our children, was right, genocide. And
Mm-hmm.
then the culture, the language, the dances, and the way of life for them, they weren't able to practice that anymore. So it disrupted the transfer knowledge to the next generation. So it was a big impact on our culture and
Mm-hmm.
to our residential school survivors, and those that the families that are had to endure all of that, to growing up and things like that. But there's also the other part is missing murdered Indigenous women and two girls, and two spirit. I mean, and culture. Through the residential school and all of that, they demeaned women.
Mm-hmm.
So women were less valued, Indigenous women.
Mm-hmm.
So through that society and culture, then women were treated as disposable and
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable, more vulnerable. So they were preyed on a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So the,
Can I ask you, do you know when the last residential school was closed?
I think it was in our territory. I think it was like 1969 or something like that.
Isn't that amazing? Like
Yeah.
that is not even that long ago.
No, no, it wasn't. So they had like day school type of stuff that went on at the residential school.
The
Mm-hmm.
last residential school, if I'm not mistaken, was actually 96.
Oh, in 96 in Kamloops.
I don't know about. I just know in Canada.
Yeah,
The
it might have been
last.
19. Maybe having the numbers wrong,
Yeah.
Yeah,
backwards.
I'd like
it
to know.
was
Yeah.
97.
Oh,
97.
97. Okay,
Like
so
that's not that is like really
yeah,
recent, right? That's a
yeah,
mind blowing that that is still happening as of like how many
hmm,
years ago? Not very
yeah.
long. And also, I wanted to ask about, they started to find all the bodies of the residential kids as well.
Yeah,
Have you?
the Kamloops, they in May they made an announcement that there were mass graves and unmarked burial sites at the residential school. And we always heard stories about that, like growing up, because we're about 30 miles from the residential school, so we heard about that. And then they made that announcement, and we went to the report findings. There were, I think, about 200 or 216 sites, and I think that was only 2 or 4 acres of the 196 acres.
Mhm.
So they have a whole bunch more acres to go.
Wow.
So it's pretty atrocious. And then, they did the ground penetrating report. Then they have to be able to do the identification of the children. So there's no international legal framework for that in Canada right now. So that's part of the challenge. And then I think they're going to appoint a special inocular to be able to look over the case. Sorry, I'm just a little tired here today. But the special people that are going to oversee the work, because there's nothing set up. Even though the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Murray Sinclair had did his report, nothing was done by Canada. So years later, we find things have to be set up for all this. And then Canada was the one that did the policy for residential school, and they're the ones that forced removed kids, and the churches operated them. So you can't really have them investigating themselves.
Doesn't
So
work very well.
not very
Happens all the
well.
time,
Yeah.
though.
So
Yeah.
we have to have the international, um, oversight, and then you have to have these independent bodies and a legal framework, and then proper processes set in place. That's what I think Kamloops and some of the lawyers and other people across Canada have been working on. And we have the Union BC and Chiefs Residential School Dialogue Center too, with Mary Ellen Turpelafon, that's working on part of those processes as well. And the Kamloops Indian band with their lawyer, and so it's going to be a big process. It's going to take a while. And meanwhile, other schools are finding mass graves and unmarked graves, and these are also emerging not only just in Canada and BC, it's also in the United States. So it's quite
Yeah,
a massive
everywhere.
undertaking everywhere.
Yeah, I like for myself, I want to talk about, all the missing children of like Canada, not just the Indigenous, not this show, but another show, right? And how they use the DUMBs to transport them all over the world, right? That's a deep underground military bases that have been mostly closed down, right? But it's like the real big traffic of women and children. It's like it's huge, and I'm sure your culture has been the same thing, right? And how are they getting a hold of the kids, right? Who's
Yeah.
doing that,
Well,
right?
ours was done through genocidal policy, right under the nose of everybody. So I think it's a shock to some people. They're going, "Oh, how could this happen?" It did happen. Some people tried to talk about it many times. There was a Truth and Reconciliation report, identified missing children's project, but nothing was done. So here we are now, and it's going to take a lot of work on many levels to have the what do they call it? You can't have truth and reconciliation without justice. That's what a lot of our chiefs are calling for now. So it's going to take a lot of work and getting through that. You can imagine the impacts to the families of those loved ones that had their loved one missing for like never heard anything, or for years and years, and they want to bring them home. They want to know what happened to them, and some are just completely will they ever know the story of
Yeah.
those children?
Doubtful. Doubtful. But to find that graves and have them identified, that's like it's a help, but it's also like a lot of emotion.
Yeah, and I just wanted to correct myself. It was 1997 with the residential school closures. Yeah, so they had different dates. All the schools closed, but in Canada that was the date. So as you said, it's not very long ago.
Yeah, no, absolutely not, right? A lot of places in like all around the world, right? It was like to me, it's like they shut down the Indigenous everywhere because of that connection to Mother Earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think the Indigenous hold all the information and the connection to her because, like, you are like a water protector. You're like always, uh, as a chief, right? Always speaking the truth, and that's why I like it, right? Because it's like, um, you know, people need to know what the truth is, you know.
Yeah, I just came out a 5 day or a 4 day fast for a spirit fast for the Fraser under the Coquitlam Bridge, and we were doing that with Sarah Cadeau, and a lot of different groups were involved, and there are fire keepers there that kept the sacred fire, and we went without food and water, and part of our culture for that is so that we can tune into what's going on, tune into our core, our center, and do prayers and meditation. And we had pipe ceremonies every day for that. And then to find out what was going on, because Trans Mountain was putting a pipeline under the Coquitlam Bridge. A lot of people aren't aware of it. But there was a lot of clanging, drilling, I swear blasting, to get that pipeline under the bridge. And
I just want to say, not necessarily under the bridge, but under the
under the
water.
water, yes, and that's
Yeah.
what we were praying, because it was under the water, and even though it was under the water, it was very loud and
Mhm.
disruptive. I couldn't imagine how it was to the salmon. I just didn't know how the salmon could even go through that at
Yeah.
this time, and the salmon are supposed to be coming up now,
The
and
vibration, eh?
yeah, the vibration of the water, if they're blasting or what they're doing, they're being very destructive.
Mhm.
And then it's a very sacred area. I managed to talk to Chief Ed Hall of Coquitlam, and he accepted some tobacco for us to be there and everything. And he was telling us that, it's a sacred area. They had ancestral villages along the river on that one side, and through the whole area, they found ancestral artifacts, and just the people were there. But we did feel the ancestors with us, and the prayers were powerful, and the vision and the meditation we were doing there, it was to support the issue of protecting that river, and we got a lot of support over the 4 days, and we closed with a like a recognition kind of to the people that all helped and came out, and to the local nations there. And I think that's really important part of our culture, because we're always respecting and honoring each other, especially the water. A lot of people, the fishermen down there, didn't know that was going on during the day, and they were coming down asking what's going on. And some of the people that went to the river to heal or meditate or just enjoy the river, they don't realize all that is going on during the night.
I couldn't imagine meditating there. Clank,
Yeah,
clank, clank,
it
clank.
was a little challenging. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think my ears were still ringing from it.
Yeah, and we were up in the center of the universe last night, and it's like dead quiet up there, right? What a contrast of coming out of 4 days of bang, bang,
Yeah.
bang to
Oh yeah,
dead
I needed
quiet.
that. I really needed to go to the center of the universe. That's a really special place. It was all a part of it was burnt up in the wildfires by Skeeterson. But Ray really did a good job of saving the area there. He's
Yeah.
quite the protector.
Yeah. Vita Lake Gold Mine Resort, absolutely beautiful place to go and
Oh
hang out.
yeah,
Ray and Diana have it, and it's absolutely beautiful. Yeah. And so we got missing and murdered women, the residential schools. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about the youth because the youth were there um, at the your Vision Quest, right? And it was nice to see a young man like that. Like when I was at Sundance, we'd have the Cedar Boys, right? And they would come along and give us the cedar, and to see them in their skirts and really immersed in the culture. And you don't see that too often, right? People are immersed in the Xboxes and all the hip hop music and stuff like that. So to see and my friend Bibiano Fernandez, he's an MMA fighter, and he wants like that for his kids, not to go that way of the hip hop and all of the Xbox, even though they do somewhat, right? But to pull them back more into the culture, right? And I think that is where the break is, where we've lost our youth, we've lost like generations into the drugs and that myself, where the people aren't home. I was in a sweat lodge one time, and it was very interesting because the guy was talking about something about the people the kids being unruly and beating up their mom and drinking and drugging and all of that, right? And I went to say something. I asked if I could say something before they opened the door, and the guy wouldn't let me, right? And then when he came back, he wanted to let me, and it was just like, you know what? This is the problem. It's like I have something to say, right? It's very relevant to what was going on, right? And we were shut down, right? There was nowhere to speak. But it's like people that I had been talking to just before that, it's the mom, right, had brought home all these guys, right? It's like a lot of people have a hard time being alone. So what are they doing? They're bringing home these men, and they're not healthy men. They're drinking, drugging, raping the kids, right? And so the kids are wounded. So we keep losing our generations, and it's not just in your culture. I know that it's in every culture. Every culture that, like, I've worked in emotional alchemy for so many years, and it's just amazing. So many people that come to me, that is what they're suffering from. So maybe you'd like to speak to that a little bit.
Well, I think with the targeting of Indigenous people, it was to remove us from the land, so the government and industry could get access to our land resources and our people. Basically, break down our culture and break down our families to remove us from the land and break down our culture, because that's what we survived from, is our culture, our language, and who we are. So the transmission of knowledge that you're talking about is so important, um, for a nation to survive. It's our way of life. So it was very much targeted, and I don't doubt it was done to other nations as well, other in tribal people or other people, right? The same thing, because it was about control, control over the land, control over the resources, and control over the people. So with that, you don't want the transition. You want them to, migrate or assimilate into society. So I think we talked about that a lot of times on our trip, how the society itself is breaking down that way. So how do you enlighten people and awaken people and get people to care about values and principles, and care about creator, care about the land, care about themselves even, right?
Yeah, that's where it starts, right?
Yeah.
Lost that love and that connection with themselves, with their family, being unaccepted. Like, these are some of the biggest things that I clear every time, is like being unloved. I don't love myself, and I don't accept myself. And the young girls are out there, and they have to have all their hair pretty and this, and I call it gooch, but my daughter's like, gooch doesn't mean something very good, right? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm just as short for Gucci, right? And it's like you're lost in that whole, look at me kind of culture, right? Instead of, how can I look at myself and what I'm doing and be happy with myself? And I grew up in a not so good way, right? So it took me a lot of work to, just to be happy with myself and to understand the wounds that I was carrying as a child and up into my teens and 20s and even 30s, and then having my daughter, right? And then having to figure all of that out with raising a baby on my own too, right? And and not bringing that man home because of all of that abuse, right? You just never know, right?
Yeah. Well, I think with our Indigenous people, it's knowing yourself, getting to know who you are. But a lot of, if you're lucky, like I was that one lucky person. My grandmother raised me till age 11, so through that I got all the teachings and all the culture and knowing who I am. But I think if you don't have that core, like you said, knowing who you are, you're always looking, trying to find it somewhere else, because you don't feel very good about yourself, and you don't know how you're trying to grab onto something, and a lot of times it's not very good stuff, right? So then you're going to spend years trying to understand what happened, then, because you have to deal with all the trauma. So our people have gone through trauma and trauma and trauma. So people say, "Oh, get over it," and I'm like, "Yeah, there's a lot to get over here." So
Absolutely.
I've seen amazing people do that, though. I mean, for people to carry on with their life, and they were able to maintain their culture and their language. So those are real strong people that survived. But again, I always believe in reinventing yourself. So I did that. And had
Over
to
and
do a
over
lot
and
of
over
stuff
again.
again. Yeah. But you can always learn more. And there's so much out there about different cultures, different nations, and especially about I would say about, how they do their prayers and their meditation, their medicines. I am learning a lot about my own as well still, but I think sometimes there's some commonalities in it, with the teachings and things like that. But, again, goes back to care for yourself, respect the land, respect the water, the food, and harmony and balance. All those things are really core and central. I think in a lot of the teachings that we have. But I wanted to talk about September 30th.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big shift here, and because of the residential schools, I didn't want to forget to talk about it. It needs to be called the Orange Shirt Day.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lady that I guess originally set it up. She's a survivor. She goes around and talks, and then Canada now they instituted it as Truth and Reconciliation Day.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And how do you feel about them changing that?
well, I think we're not there yet.
Yeah.
First of all, and there's a long, especially with now with the residential school children, mass graves, and unmarked burial sites coming up. Wow, that's like, you know, pretty shocking to everybody. Even though most of our people that went to the school kind of heard those stories. I was involved in a book called Behind Closed Doors with Agnes Jack. I did most of the publishing on it through the Secwepemc Cultural Education Society. They're the one that owns the copyright, but Agnes Jack was the main editor. There was a couple other editors, and there were like 31 accounts, I believe, of student residential school survivors. And yeah, it's very like their stories, weren't believed. Then
Mm-hmm.
we were told in some cases, like, "Wow, maybe you shouldn't write, you shouldn't print that because it doesn't sound
Good.
true,
Yeah.
good or true."
Yeah.
Right? And because they were talking about suicide, the murders, all of those things that happened. Those are, as far as I know, true accounts from the survivors. Some of them passed away now.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, I was wondering what would they think if they were alive about Truth and Reconciliation Day,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they would say the same thing. There's a long ways to go. I know Chief Bobby Joseph works really hard at Reconciliation Day. Everybody, to work together and learn about reconciliation. But I think the government has a lot of work to do that, and the churches haven't released a lot of the data, the records yet.
Mm-hmm.
So some have a bit,
Mm-hmm.
but not all of it. So they need to release that to the nation so they could do that important research on the murdered and missing children. And so we're not there yet in my eyes. We got a lot to do. But I know Tecumseh is organizing a September 30th day, and there's some other nations and other organizations and communities that are organizing events. I encourage people to go out and learn about them and listen to them if they're online, because I think it's really important for all of us to understand our genocide that happened in Canada and how we're going to change what's going on now.
Yeah. I want to talk about Kevin and Annette in a minute because that's where I learned about the residential schools in the beginning, probably about 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, right? But what, like, why would they change it from Orange Shirt Day to Truth and Reconciliation, and what do they mean by reconciliation?
Well, I think when it was Orange Shirt Day, it just, to me, it was like, okay, you can put on a T-shirt and
Yeah.
kind of. I don't think that was the meaning of the lady that set it up. I think she wanted to educate people on residential school, so I think that was her intent.
Mm-hmm.
And then with Truth and Reconciliation Day, I think because they did the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, there were suggestions they turn that into that day. So they did do that. How much consultation they did to First Nations, I didn't see any. It was a unilateral decision of the government. But again, probably I always have a suspicious mind, so I'm thinking they're trying to make it look like they're doing something on this issue of the residential schools. So, but I can see the schools all responding in a way. They're, some schools in Vernon, they're going to do, what Indigenous foods are and talk about Indigenous people and reconciliation. So a different way to open up on it. Some other schools are doing other things, and probably most likely the universities. But I can still see a lot of people would say, okay, we have a lot of work to do yet.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that they changed it, right? And now all the truth is coming out about all the buried bodies, right? So if you're going to name something, you better be prepared, because if you're going to name it truth, well, the truth is going to come out. Now, what does the reconciliation look like?
Yeah, or the justice.
The justice. And so is reconciliation mean the justice for you? Like, what
Not
does
yet,
that mean?
Not yet, because as I mentioned, there's no legal framework in Canada set up on how to deal with this. They're starting to appoint special people here and there, and there's no funding for the legal parts of it.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't want to fund the people to, make them accountable
Yeah.
and make them so we can get justice. So there's issues.
How do you think that looks like for you going forward to solve that? Like, how could they
Oh
solve that?
gosh, it's we've our community. We reached out to our survivors to get
Mm-hmm.
sort of their thoughts, what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still going through that process
Mm-hmm.
because I think the triggering that happened,
Mm-hmm.
and my dad actually wrote out what he had in recommendations, which made it a lot easier. But you have some of the members that I seen it play out, and it was like some of the survivors were they just could lay on the couch for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like disbelief, I guess. Even though they know they have people missing,
Mm-hmm.
shock, and some are still really angry and resentful.
Mm-hmm.
Some had to work really hard. Some lost their lives,
Mm-hmm.
or ended up, in places where they're still struggling to get out of, right? Jail, downtown, lots of issues that our people had with this trauma. So to me, it's going to take a lot of efforts on all levels to have justice about this residential school issue.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wish you a lot of luck on that because, a lot of recognition mostly. Like when people don't know, they don't know. And I think Kevin and Annette did a good job of like bringing that to light a long time ago, right? Because I had no idea what was going on there. And then I met Capilano from down here, and he told me that they hung them up. Right by their arms, right, and they had to dangle there all night, right. And if they thought hit the guy that was there is sleeping, that they would put their feet over on the bed so they could get some relief on their shoulders, and that guy would wake up and whack them, right? And that's just like a
Mm.
minor thing of torture for the people that were there.
Yeah, there. Well, I think with Kevin, he came out and announced that a lot of people was really disbelieved that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we heard horror stories in Kamloops as well, and all of that still has to be investigated and researched. But there's some ways, they threw bodies, babies in furnaces. So
Yeah.
that still is disbelief. That anyone could do that, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot to research, a lot to find out, and Kamloops is doing a tremendous job, in the work that they have to do, and all the other residential schools, the First Nation communities, but they can't do it alone. It's going to cost a lot of money, to undertake this. That happened, and I think to unravel it and to deal with it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort on everybody's part, because we can't just leave it up to these communities that were affected,
So, because a lot of these residential schools were run by, priests and nuns and that, right? Where do you think the origins of that come from? And I just want to like lead into that with like Queen Elizabeth coming with Prince, her husband, right? And going to the residential school in Saskatchewan and taking 10 kids from there, right? And those 10 kids never returned to the residential schools, right? So I look at it, was there any residential schools that weren't run by
they were
religious?
all operated by different religions. I think in BC it was mostly a Roman Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
so it was all of, as far as I know, run by different, like United Church,
Mm-hmm.
Catholic Church, Presbyterian.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different faiths that ran the schools. So I believe they need to be equally accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, I see it really grappling with their faith right now. That could this happen? Some
Yeah.
priests are outright in Edmonton saying this, couldn't have happened, and
Denial.
and
I'll put that on my
denial.
list, right?
Oh, very much so. So there is a lot of that I seen playing out in the media, and
Mm-hmm.
how is that how in the social media that who's posting stuff, is that the way to deal with this in a good way?
Yeah.
I don't believe so, because you're just causing more trauma,
Yeah.
not only for his the ones that go to his parish, but or his congregation. And it's also inflicting more trauma and triggering our Indigenous people who went to residential school. So it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a lot of thought. And I think he was removed temporarily for now.
Yeah.
But right now, I think there still needs to be a lot more understanding in when people are, doing things like that, because
Yeah.
it's something we all didn't expect.
Yeah.
Like, although in our families and our communities, we heard the stories.
Mm-hmm.
Like when Kevin and Annette came out with it, a lot of people didn't believe him either.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure like how the research is all going to come together, but there's a lot of research and documents that need to come together
Mm-hmm.
for the full story.
For the full story, right, and the responsibility for it. And I follow a page on Telegram, Romano Diddolo, right, and it's interesting what she talks about because were these people harvesting these kids? Were they doing satanic ceremony with them? Like, were they drinking their blood and sometimes even eating them? Right, that's just what these people were doing. And was that in that church? Was that what was happening? Right, like I don't know, right?
I don't know if people know the truth. That's the sad part about
Mm-hmm.
everything. But I think the research, investigation, and documentation is going to be really important.
Mm-hmm. Good, good. I'd just like to go into missing and murdered women a little bit, because I worked with that with you for just a little bit, and maybe you can speak more about that so people understand like what it is that's happening, if that's okay to
Well,
talk about that.
even the national inquiry is finished on missing murdered Indigenous women and girls in Two Spirit. It's still continuing. There's still hundreds of women going missing and girls in Two Spirit, so it hasn't stopped. Really, with the national inquiry, the approach they used, which we said no, it needed to include the survivors, needed to include all of this, a more inclusive process. They did it in a structured way that kind of a lot of the voices weren't able to be included. So I'm part of a Vancouver coalition in downtown Vancouver, and they never did a proper consultation with us. It wasn't like it should have been. And what really ended up rolling out was now that seems to me we have to have our own um, action plan. So instead of it being like an action plan that would have been across Canada and resourced, that a lot of the organizations are being forced to kind of come up with their own resources to do an action plan, which is not what I think the intent of either the commissioners were with the National Inquiry. So, they documented the issue, and there wasn't really a full enough time. I think only 6 months were given to the expert panel and to the institutional one. So that would have been accountability for the RCMP, justice, and social services, all that kind of stuff. And then the expert panel was time to get more expert people on this issue to make recommendations. So there was only 6 months, I think, given to those two panels. So that report didn't really fully encompass all that. I believed it should have had more time for that. So, and then the downtown east side, they came up with their own Red Woman Rising report that had a lot of good recommendations in there. So I'd encourage the audience to check that book out because it not only identified the issue, it identified some solutions.
And who wrote that?
The Downtown East Side Women's Center.
Nice. Wrote it together.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it was a collective book. There's many. Some are passed away now, but there's many of the women that contributed to that. So I saw that as a collective experience and collective work. Some didn't quite agree with it either, but that was the issue. It was just the best they could do to put the book together. But that was an example I saw of some solutions. For community based work they were doing.
Good, good. And Highway of Tears, like that was like more up towards Prince George
Vanderhoof.
and that Vanderhoof and that, right? And do you know much about what was going on there? Because that was a lot of Indigenous women missing.
Well, I know some of the ladies got involved with the National Inquiry, but it was like a selective process. So how was that collective, right? So, and I know some ladies that just continue the work that they've been doing. Gladys Raddick is one of them. She's worked tirelessly on the issue and knows the issues very well. And for the solutions are just a lot of it is the the genocide and displacement of our people. So if we had our land back, we'd have the resources and wealth, right? So then we would be able to get the language and the culture, and we'd be able to get the resources, and we'd be able to get our foods back, all of those things that are being whittled away now, and we wouldn't have so much displacement. So it was a tremendous impact on our women and girls in Two Spirit on the overall genocide policy of Canada. So now it's working with women to empower them and give them their voice, and also to help them with the culture and the knowledge, right? Because women were really the backbone of our communities and our nations and our families.
And the other place that I know of is up at Salmon Arm, right there, with all those women that went missing from there. Has there been like
Jody Leon's been doing a lot of work there. I recognize, the tremendous effort she's been done. There were a lot of the cases they had, but I can't understand why Curtis Legnon keeps getting out, right? And as time served, so it doesn't even make sense. But there's still a large amount of women that were missing there, and still haven't been found. So it's going to take. I went to a lot of the rallies, and one of the girls were from Alberta. Her mother comes over all the time. It's just in it that it could happen, and I think that really shook the neighborhood up. That it could happen in their neighborhood. Well, I'm thinking it could happen anywhere. So
anywhere, and it has happened anywhere. It's like
yes,
this has been going on like all. I don't know if people realize it, but there's 1 million children a year that go missing. 800,000 from um, USA alone. Where do all those kids go? Where are they lost, right? They're lost in like the people that are supposed to protect them the most, right? Child protection services, foster care. You look at the border, right? They've lost 4,500 of the kids that come across the border alone. Where are
yeah,
those
I think
kids?
you're talking about human trafficking. That
Yes,
probably
I
could be
am.
almost another show,
Yeah.
because that's a huge issue as well. And I've got colleagues that have been doing a bit of the research and work in the United States, and I see, some of the cases in Alberta, and it's happening here in BC as well. There's one lady that was working here really strongly on the issue. She might be somebody that I can recommend that you could talk about with human trafficking, but it is a huge issue,
Absolutely.
and it involves, of course, Indigenous women, but other non-Indigenous people as well, of a lot of different ages. Because when we were out at the Trans Mountain at below the bridge at Coquitlam, there was actually a lady. There was a poster there I seen too that she was missing. She was 42 years old. So that family was actively searching for her in that park. So you have to really watch your children, really watch the women, and I met I have to mention our Union BC Chiefs women's rep Melissa Louis Moses. Sorry, she does a lot of different work, with self defense, and I'm also part of the
Lovely
House of the
lady.
Moon.
Yeah.
It's a North American group that we work with. It's empowering women and also doing self defense with women. So there's some things that we can do, and that's like um, we started it with nothing. It's not government run either, funded. So there are things that we need to do, things like that, but it's continually, I think, because the human trafficking is increased so much that you have to find ways to to protect and defend your family and your the community against the.
Predators.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it really starts at home again, right? It's like the family has been broken, and I think awareness, right? Like, if people have no awareness of like where their products are coming from, these big corporations, right? And they're doing it blatantly, like Walmart, right? Is like they're selling these cabinets and t-shirts and socks that are like $4,000, $5,000, right? Like what is that, right? And Wayfair got busted, same thing, right? They had these nice cabinets, and with them was like the name of the cabinet, and then you go and you look at the names on the missing kids thing, and there's the person. So all that they had the little scam run that you want this locker, this is how much it costs, and go look on the missing kids report, and then that's who you're getting. That's in the locker, but you're not really buying a locker. You're buying a child, and there's a lot of that going on out there, but nobody knows, you know. So I really think like people really need to be aware of what's going on. So we've got 15 minutes left of the show, and I've just been scribbling down a few things for
Okay.
you, right? And I heard anger, resentment, struggle, trauma, denial, and displacement.
Mhm.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add to that list that you think would be helpful for people that have maybe, lost people or something that could just help them?
Well, I think it's, yeah, I really support the emotional clearing
Mm-hmm.
when you can identify what it is. Some people even struggle with identifying it because they're so disconnected from themselves because of the
Absolutely.
trauma.
Yeah.
So, they have to talk about it a bit
Mm-hmm.
and really try to feel what are they really actually feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and then where is it? Like you
Yeah.
always teach, right?
Yeah.
And then releasing
Yeah.
that trauma, because like I can talk about personal experience, like over the when I was doing that fast, I was getting under a lot of stress and anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
and so a lot of that was causing, I felt like a heart attack type thing. I don't want to alarm anybody. It was a heart attack. It was stress and anxiety. But when I went through the fast, and then we did the pipe ceremony, and I kind of centered on where that was, and was able to release it. It really relieved all that things that were really
Hold me.
squeezing my
Yeah.
heart, and just really doing a lot of stuff to my health.
Yeah.
And then when we went to the center of the universe with those additional processes we went through, I was able to release it further.
Mm-hmm.
So supposed to see my doctor Monday. I thought I'd have to. So if I were going to go, you're fine. There's nothing wrong.
Yeah, we fixed you.
It's
A
all
little bit
fixed.
of prayers, a little bit of emotional alchemy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how I see emotional alchemy is like we are beings of light, and there's grids of energy that are stuck in us. Like we live in the hologram. That's how I see it, right? And what those grids look like is like how I saw it was a green neon grid with black mist coming down on it, and then whatever the motion that we were doing, wherever it was stuck on the body, it wasn't actually me doing it. It was somebody else doing it, and we were witnessing it. So it was coming to sit down on us wherever our frustration and anger was, because that's what they were doing. And it was locking on to wherever it was. And it felt like a 200-pound wet blanket was coming down on top of me. And I just realized then that this is okay, this is what's happening. Like, and every time you do this emotion, it's like more and more and more. And so you said stress and anxiety. And so every little thing would be triggered. So your stress and anxiety would be vibrating, and it would bring events, emotions, and people to you. Person, places, and events to you to activate it some more. And then pretty soon it's like the big squeeze, right? And I like how you do the work, right? I always appreciate when my students and clients and friends do the work, that when they've come to see me, right? Because it's like my work is about helping yourself, right? By becoming aware of what it is that you're doing. And a lot of people aren't aware. They're repeatedly telling their stories. And every time you tell that story, what's happening is you're adding more of that energy to your body, right? And so that's not a good thing to do, because then you get sicker and sicker and sicker, and all these heavy grids are pushing you down and holding you down, and then making you depressed and sometimes even suicidal. And I see it like so there's beings, I call them dimensional wildlife, right, that are out there, right, and they need to be fed too. They need energy, and the energy that they're feeding is off of, whether it's like they like anger, sadness, whatever it is. Sometimes it's sexual stuff, right? That's where, all the pornography stuff really needs to be shut down, right? Because it's like it lowers the consciousness of everything. But, that's what they're feeding off of, right? So, how do we get those grids off so that those beings can't come back?
Yeah, I think in our Indigenous way, it's like there's a white wolf and a black wolf.
Yeah.
And basically, they say, what wolf are you going to feed? The white wolf or the black wolf with
Yeah.
negative energy or positive energy?
Yeah.
So it's simplified that way. And then being in tune with it, I think it's going to be the other part. How in tune with what energy are you giving?
Yeah.
When you're talking with people, are you building them up and positive and giving positive energy, or are you gonna shut them down and give them negative energy? So that's it. I guess sort of similar.
Yeah. And that energy that you're putting out, right? It's like, how is it that you're doing? It's all about you, right? Because it's like, if they're angry, how is your anger making them more or less? Right. And I really love you because you're like stoic, right?
Well, that's a stereotype. No,
Yeah. No,
but
it's
yeah,
the
no.
truth.
I just learned a long time ago with all the multiple traumas I went through. It's not to react right
Yeah.
away to things. And then
Yeah.
realizing my biggest learning was people are in their own levels of healing.
Mm-hmm.
So the person that's jumping around in front of you, yelling and red faced and all that, like,
Mm-hmm.
well, and if you're sending out calmer energy too,
Mm-hmm.
that helps. And then just
Bring it
diffusing it
down.
and then finding out, what really the issue is. And sometimes you're surprised what you would find the issue out that is really the root issue. And I
Yeah.
know that's your work when
Yeah.
you go through and finding
Yeah.
out what these root issues are and then cleaning them off.
The elephant in the room, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's there, right? Okay, so yeah, like I brought that up about you being very stoic, right? Because I used to have a lot of emotions and I'd be like up and down, right? And I'm seeing the shaman over in North Van and he's like, you're too flat lined, right? You need to be more up and down, right? And I'm like, I don't want to be up and down because that up, of course I get like a little bit triggered here and there by
mm,
things, right? But I don't like I won't say I don't like, that's not a good word. I prefer to be like very steady because if we're up here or down here, we're leaking out our energy, right? And I like to covet mine, keep it so that I have more energy to give when somebody needs my help,
so
right?
being more conscious of your energy
Mm-hmm.
flow, and if there is energy leaking, like you said, and then because we only my mom always says we are energy, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the elders I talk to talk about that, and
Mm-hmm.
how as energy beings, how we manage that and how we respect and care for it too, because you can create your own energy.
Absolutely,
Because
yeah.
I used to be really bad at that. I'd say, "Oh, hug me," or whatever,
Yeah.
my
I want
grandson,
to
or
take it.
I need some energy. I'm going, "Oh, that's so bad," because we can create that energy, as we talked about, at the center of the
Mm-hmm.
universe, from Mother Earth and Father Sky. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that was a good way you talked about that.
Yeah.
So I was going, yes, because how do you explain to somebody, how do I create my own energy, instead of them having to
Take
go
it
try to take it here or there? They don't understand that. But understanding first, we are energy. So how do we manage that on that
Absolutely
level?
right, because it's like you said, like people want energy and they fail to know how to do it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to share, we're going to clear these emotions. We've got a few minutes left. So what everybody in the audience, you can do this along with us, whether it's live or you watch this 10 years from now, it's all the same, right? So what I'm going to get you to do is you can just close your eyes and you can take a deep breath, and we want to do a water breath, which is a Hawaiian. It's a count of 4 in and 8 out, in through the nose and out through the mouth. So breathing in as deep as you can and out as deep as you can. And as you continue to breathe in, imagine a tube coming up from Mother Earth through your pelvic floor into your heart center. It's about a 12-inch diameter ball. Allow it to expand. And then on the exhale, back in and back down to Mother Earth. And every time you breathe in, you're pulling energy from Mother Earth and expanding it. And then you're pushing it back down to Mother Earth and giving some of your love back to Mother Earth. And if you breathe this way for 10 minutes, you're really going to feel a lot of energy in your body. And if you come to my workshops or a personal session, then you're going to be breathing like this for an hour or more, right? And when you do that, sometimes your hands cramp up, you numb tingling in your face, your feet, whatever. So just breathing in and expanding, and then breathing in golden light, using your imagination to bring that golden light in, expand, and then return. And on the next breath, allow that golden light to come in and expand all the way out to the Leonardo sphere, which is a bubble that is just above your head to just below your feet. So just imagine, use your imagination. It's always about awareness. Where's that emotion on our body? Use your breath and imagination. So the more that we do that, we're just breathing in, expanding, and see if you can feel it go through every cell, wavelet, and particle. And then as it hits that Leonardo sphere and comes back in, can you feel that as well coming through every cell, wavelet, and particle? And cleaning, cleansing, and clearing everything. And then back down to Mother Earth, back in, expand, and return. And feel what that feels like, because it's going to feel like a wave. If you can really let your imagination go, you'll feel the wave go out and then come back in. And so then allow yourself to connect with Father Sky. It's all the energy from out there, whatever out there is. I have no idea. And so breathing that energy in through the top of your head into the heart center and expand it with Mother Earth's love and your love, and then allow that energy to go back into the heart center and back up to Father Sky and back down to Mother Earth. And notice the difference, because Mother Earth is the divine feminine and Father Sky is the divine masculine. So we got the mother, the father, and you, the child. This is the sacred geometry that's connecting the above and the below to you. And so this is how we power up. We are the power. And I teach how to activate your Merkaba, which is like your vehicle of ascension. And when you activate that, you have like the power of a town of 15,000 people. Imagine that's who you are. And then we make it invisible, untraceable, and undetectable. So just breathing like that in, golden light from Mother Earth, Father Sky into your heart center, expand and return. And just keep that going. And I'm going to associate you into a few energies that I found when Judy was speaking, and anger. So, can you remember a time when you felt anger? Maybe today, yesterday, last week, last month? I just want you to close your eyes or keep your eyes closed. Go back to that time now. See yourself in that. What were you doing that caused you to be angry? And then step into your body again using your imagination, and right away you'll feel some tightness somewhere or a pinprick. Or how is that coming up for you? Nausea or tightness anywhere in your body? Feel that, and then allow the energy to come right from your heart center, right to wherever that energy is stuck on your body. And just trust, right? Keep burning it off. You can make it like a laser beam or a flame, however you want to do it. Just keep breathing and sending that energy there. And then we've got resentment. And so feel that resentment. Where is that on your body? And just notice it. Allow your unconscious mind to show you in that energy of anger, where is the resentment? Breathing right into it, sending that another light right to that flame, laser beam, whatever you want, and then feel the struggle. Allow that struggle to be there. Or go back to a time when you felt the struggle. Feel that and send the light right to it. Trusting the unconscious mind to go all the way back to the root grid and heal it with divine love and forgiveness. Coming all the way up to now and into the future, completely transforming all timelines. Just letting it go. One more big breath right into that as we move on to trauma. So, can you remember a time when you felt trauma in your life? Anytime, today, yesterday, last week, last month, or maybe something from your childhood or your teenage, something that really stands out for you. And just in your imagination, go back to that time now, step into your body and feel the feeling of trauma. And then immediately forget the trauma and start sending the light right to wherever the trauma was. What'll happen is if you go into the story, you'll stop breathing and I will just not even be on the radar anymore. So feel that trauma, send the light right there, and then feel the denial. Because a lot of times we want to deny our own trauma and we stuff it down or we put it behind us, and then we end up with big bumps or indigestion, right? Not healthy, either one. And so displacement. How many times have you felt displaced? Even all these kids that have been displaced out of their families into foster homes, right? Whatever it is that made you feel displaced, just go back to that time now. Stay it out of the story. You just want to go in for a second and feel that trauma and breathe right into it. Big breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And then feeling stress. So feel the stress. Where is it on your body? And the anxiety. Sending the light right to it, trusting the unconscious mind to go all the way back to the root grid and heal it with divine love and forgiveness. Coming all the way up to now and into the future, completely transforming all timelines. Some of the release will come like yawns, some it will come like tears coming down your face, some will just feel lighter after you're done some of this. Like we get so tired and then we get hungry and we think, oh well, that what was that all about? But really the tired is like we've been hanging on to this stuff forever, for dear life. Who are we without our emotions? And when we have no emotions, we have the ability to react in love rather than react and then we're like in anger or something else. So I just want to say thank you for doing the clearing. Thank you for coming to the show, Judy. It was always an honor to be with you. And yeah, thank you for everything that you shared. I'm Laurie Morningstar from morningstartransformations.com. I want to thank Close Look TV and thank you for watching my show, Sweet Culture.